Thank you so much, Deanna, and also Margaret and the Tree series, and thanks April for the lovely reading before me, and thanks to all the people from the open mic. Can people hear me? This is a strange microphone. It's like I can't hear it magnifying my voice, but I trust that it's happening. So I'm going to read just a little bit from the book, and maybe towards the end I have this big stack of word processor pages that I brought of new stuff that I'm mostly going to read from. And so the first poem I'm going to read is about cement. I don't know how many people here have had the pleasure of pouring cement. It was an unknown experience to me until fairly recently. And I would really recommend it were it not for the lasting consequences when you pour cement. Owing to a series of sort of misunderstandings, my partner and I ended up with this cement truck dumping cement in our backyard that we had to very quickly level and totally failed to do, which is what led us to discover this additional product called self-leveling cement, which is a terrifying liquid that you sort of mix, and I don't know, the consistency is like really, really weak muffin batter or something, and you're supposed to just pour it on top of your badly poured cement, and it will make it all better, in theory. So this poem is called Quickcrete Self-Leveling Cement Compound Consumer Feedback. From the window I can see it has already happened, in the time it takes a tub of time to tip. Lawn and pink impatience pulled inch by quick inch under the lip. It tumbles down the stairs in practically no seconds. Me. My saddest shoes are flat as tickets to an exhibit that's just appeared. The look-alike lake is opaque as a spill in MS Paint, as the yard before anyone saw it. It takes my reflection under its wing. It is cake batter, panless, tempting each direction. Invites the eensy clovers to change behind its towel, which is gray, drenched, immense, curiously gritless, silken, impossible to lift. Maybe Google Earth has something just here to hide. A vein in the brain blooped like a metallic inked pen. Or Celeste, universal dentist, could be taking an impression of everything. I have always loved the little sharp-edged tools. A natural assistant, I select a spackle blade, row out, face almost in the starless, rudder of a nose set to hover. My idea is just smooth things over. I'm not really talking to my husband, who is, by the evidence, to blame, plus he's busy trying to jerry-rig a barricade with the cement's own packaging. Surviving fragments of the text suggest we have less than 20 minutes. That's when I notice the ant stepping into the slow surf, matte jello on a windless expanse. Whoa there. Hey. Hey. She tries to turn, but can't. Then, without a backward glance, her friend joins her. It's girls' night out at Aquafit with weights in the deep end, and I am powerless to stop them from registering. Yes, someone has tipped the carton labeled evening. It's easier once you're in, isn't it? Says the second ant, in pheromone code to the first, who sweats a clumpy leg lift. The shadows flex and lengthen. Whisked egg whites, soft ice cream, blue smoothie, maple filling, wild honey, ranch dressing, pudding with carrageenan, barbecue drippings, a montage of pools these gals have lapped before. I can't handle it anymore. I grab a dead leaf from fall's waterfall and scoop them out. Disclaimer, pouring may affect the season. They are two tiny elephants towing their haunches to the statuary. Time is speeding up as the cement slows down. If I wash them clean, they'll drown. I should really stop looking, but new scene. An earthworm spikes the surface, seamstress pursuing her childhood dream of becoming megafauna, a lake monster, and enjoying some early success. She's gained a costume's worth of extra skin, like a hooded cobra's crinoline, just by being in her element. Who am I to play the skeptic? My gaze only solidifies her fame. A dozen more ants wade in to photograph her body with their jaws. The trap is more complicated than any of us know. Should we be wearing masks? This is the first thing I say aloud. My husband, the man who cannot resist a homonym, recalls a time he daubed grapefruit-scented clay all around his eye holes. Though synthetic, it parched like an afternoon of real sun, the kind of singular experience statistics suggest will add scenes to your life, stretching it. Lines like that make me want to clock him. I have just the trowel, twitching its shadow like a minute hand over our moonscape, dripping. The end is coming. Do you find it hard to breathe, he asks. The particulate. Yes, God, yes, with all my heart. We twang twin yellow bands around our heads and secure our personal bubbles as the intercoms on aircraft instruct before helping others. Gravity, a rule I don't especially understand, is still visibly doing its thing. I'm not really married, but it seemed only appropriate in a poem about cement to make the relationship permanent. So the next poem I'm going to read is called American Dream versus Russian Doll, and the best explanation I can offer of it is that it's about outward expansion versus inward expansion, and it's got a lot of containers in it. All of it, even scum, wants to be held in the snuggest way, like boiled jam in a sealed jar in a sun-filled window, which is one explanation of how I got knocked up. A succulent wants new containers to cup the lobes and curlicues. The technique is swell to fill it, spill out, get another, bigger, fill, frond, frill. Mini pretzels hold their own salted snail salves. My budding family buys them bulk, balloons the bag to splitting. An overstuffed couch calves new cushions in the heat, crevasses munch the pretzel crumbs. Steadily, new humans will park their moons above the canyons, a terrarium. God loves to put a lid on it. Mason jar, laundry hamper, eyeball, capsule, yap, feature-length film filled with family secrets that wins the golden shell. Any kind of steamer, ships to take migrants overseas, and smart cars, cheap drunks thinking in limericks. My driving mind fits also perfectly within the teacup of a pickup, a basic two-door country the size of a pantry, eating highway a liter per second like licorice. I'm looking for a homestead just big enough for us and the licorice. A bread and butter dream house with enough room to hang a family, hang panties to dry, leopard print, tortoiseshell, kinds I haven't heard of, on a line that ensnares a square of sky my grandparents brought from the old country. In nature, big fish eat smaller ones, and the tiniest have time to feel love before they are used calorically, and the big fish feel satisfied, then are eaten alive by the love, a heavenly Rubbermaid. At Costco, I upgraded the empire from pot to shatterproof glass bowl. The president fish ate all his predecessors. They live on inside him like tree rings. God knows the nature documentary is really just a salad spinner. We all need to be held. Let blister, stadium, waiting room, Dixie cup, atmosphere, anxiety, thundercloud, lights out, bucket seat, bullet hole, colander, closet organizer, containment as a strategy. Let a bucket or a burn vent, an inner tube, anaconda, institution, orifice, marsupial, Subaru, Cadbury, cream egg. Toad in the hole and pee on a stick, teen pregnancy, eggs Benedict. Lift the lid on the Oval Office Xerox, strip to the socks, sing reproductive freedom, reproductive freedom, reproductive freedom. The next thing I'm going to read is a found text piece, and it's made from two different texts, books, I guess. One is a cookbook, which I recommend unreservedly. It's been like my favorite thing to read in years. It's called An Everlasting Meal by Tamar Adler. And although I have only limitedly tried to apply the recipes in the book, and it's actually gone surprisingly well, the really fun thing to do is read the cookbook. It's written in this sort of very calming, meditative way, and the basic piece of advice is just boil everything for a really long time. And they're sort of like, start boiling a pot of water, put some broccoli in it, don't worry if the broccoli turns brown, just keep boil some more water, put some more things in the water, just keep boiling everything. I mean, it sounds like logically very dubious, but it's written in this persuasive style, and so you sort of are reading along and you think, oh my God, what what have I just done? Although in its defense, I have occasionally tried a couple of things from it, and they're way less disgusting than they sound like they would be. So that's one of the books, and then the other book is an Ontario Provincial Police crowd control manual from a few years ago. And the reason that I put the two together, I've been reading a lot about crowd theory and sort of various, I guess, philosophies of why people behave the way they do in crowds. And there's a long-standing metaphor that runs through crowd theory and a lot of the ways people have written about crowds, that the people are behaving like water, and that people in a riot, for example, are like agitated water or boiling water. So the poem is alternating phrases or fragments of phrases from these two books, and in some places I've run them together into one voice. It's called Kettle. 1. Ensemble. Most of us already have water, a pot to put it in. It is hard to improve on the men and equipment. Strategically deploy a big pot of water on the stove. Illuminate, if at night, the burner under it. Start looking for things to put in it. Make use of infiltration methods. And there you'll be, having retrieved a pot, filled it, and lit a burner. Even though the water is boiling, you can test it with your finger. Every source of information must be cultivated. You don't need to know how the properties of water differ at 100 degrees and at 180, but by tasting it at those temperatures, you report every bit of information, regardless how insignificant, to headquarters. This may at first feel ridiculous, and then it will start to seem so useful, you'll stand by the pot feeling quite ingenious. The degree and quality of intelligence available will leave enough on your skin for you to taste, maintaining physical contact, just tapping the surface. 2. Cadenza with interruptions. An unlawful assembly is an assembly of 3 or more persons who, with intent to carry out any common purpose, assemble in such a manner. What is more enticing and confounding than an artichoke? Persons who are lawfully assembled may become an unlawful assembly if they conduct themselves with a common purpose in a manner. All is number. Number is in all. Number is in the individual. Ecstasy is a number. In a manner that would have made the assembly unlawful if they had assembled in that manner. If you are ever too scattered to focus, which I sometimes am, use a sharp knife to cut lightly where leaf and stem meet. 3. Square dance. It should be mentioned that proper balance and footwork are vital if success is to be attained in any of the baton techniques. While the pasta is cooking, smash your vegetable a little with a wooden spoon. Smooth and coordinated movements of individual units and bodies of officers conveys the impression that the control force obviously knows what to do, how to do it, and therefore will. Cut off the big, thick main stem or core. Cut the remainder of the heads into long pieces that are more like batons, held at a 45-degree angle pointing at the suspect's throat. We think we're being bullish with vegetables by putting them in water when we're actually fire departments, called florets if necessary. After you strike your opponent's midsection with the tip of the baton, you bring your right hand up in an arc to the left side of his jaw, then roughly chop a big handful of parsley. The left arm forward and slightly bent at the elbow. A flower for a flower, a root for a root, shoot for shoot, stem for stem, tuber for tuber. The forward step and sharp thrust are essential. Bury that tip. This is good with everything other than beets, which leave their garish stain on everything. Command, squat, assemble, move. If wiggling doesn't feel reassuring, cut into a piece of leg when you think its time might be up. At the halt, the feet are apart. When the water runs clear, let a good amount pool in the corner of the pan. For admonition from the caller. The only words required shall be for command purposes, used only by command personnel. There's not much I dislike more than biting into a perfectly lovely vegetable and hearing it squeak. Your own horn. Most of us regard beans with suspicion. Probable types of people who create and might support a disturbance. All bread soups are somewhere between soup and anonymity. Individual loses his identity and feels all our appetites are similar. Panty raids, football, pep rallies, etc. Rice and ground corn are both pacifists and demonstrators of the sit-in or sit-down type, showily defying people who stand ceremoniously. Beans have always been associated, if not with poverty, with suggestions that the police have poisonous gas and similar remarks. But you can practice making bread. I see improvement in my little clod-like loaves all the time. The reception, processing, and evacuation of prisoners drain the beans through a colander. Beans get better over a few days sitting, swelled. Leftover bread soup should be formed into little cakes, maintaining composure. Risotto, after sitting for a night, becomes clay-like and can be shaped. The last section is called Toasty Frosty, and it's actually the second last section, and it's my version of Robert Frost's Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in a collection of unorganized persons without leadership. I recommend heating up a great deal of it. Some say in an organized crowd with leadership and a common motive for action. Covered if you're in a rush, because it will boil faster that way. Acquisitive, mobs motivated by desire to acquire something. Or uncovered if you need time to figure out what you want to boil. Casual, crowd that has a common interest momentarily. Whichever technique you choose, never bluff or threaten, act decisively, the world, which began by some assessments with a lot of water at a rolling boil, will not come to an end. It will be possible to freeze or contain the affected area and very quickly isolate it. Duet. Anchovies divide us into lovers and fighters. No one is neutral. Moving into formations 180 steps per minute. The court was again bewitched, this time by garlic. Interpretation determines the significance of the information with respect to what is already known, and it draws conclusions as to the probable meaning of the evaluated information. If you end up with chicken feet, freeze them in a plastic bag. Must be properly timed or the action can be misinterpreted and become inflammatory. This is not a cookbook or a memoir or a story about one person or one thing. Aerial photographs have proved invaluable and should be made if possible. If there is anything you can learn from what is happening, learn it. Thank you. So a lot of the poems I've been writing have had something to do with water, and I think I've got a couple stacked in a row here. This one's called Water Conscious, and it's basically a collection of very bad advice on saving water. Cry in the shower. Save yourself a rainstorm. Listen to the basketballs falling tropically on the neighbor's court. Drop kick a potted cactus for its dram of ooze. Lick your wounds at the watering hole 2 blocks upstream. Drool into your beer, then drift outdoors. Take a leak on the levee. Confuse tribulation with tributary. Invite psycho to supper. Shower. If cooking up a storm, cry into the flour. Try to milk the cat. Lick your wounds. Empty sacks of rock salt over anyone's tin roof. Percentage-wise, people are mostly drips. It takes umpteen to plump a rain pillow, glutton rigged under the eaves, to usher last night's downpour to your shower. Shh. I was reading for a while that there's this kind of rain barrel, I think it's made in Australia, it's in the shape of Lego building blocks, and people have started to build houses out of them, is this sort of the idea. So I was reading about that also when thinking about that poem, the idea of this house that you could just put taps into the wall wherever. I mean, you'd want them to be pretty solid. Let's go ahead. I have a friend who she's a very picky eater, and it's all sort of like texturally based. She has a rule which she articulates as that she won't eat anything that has stuff in it, which which in my mind encompasses most foods, but to her is a very specific thing, like raisins in a muffin, or like anything that interrupts the texture. And I guess that's partly behind this poem. It's called Texture Heaven, and based on a philosophy of everything being totally uniform throughout. Consistent means no surprises at the center. Consistency is the preferred swimming hole option. Sanding down something to find something more is soothing. Additional smooth, similar, fine grit, infinity of this one thing. The porch of my dreams optimally, expensively, solidly continues softwood densest sleep, ganache near the earth's core. As the continental shelf is well built, you can swim very far and find in reserve some shelf, extending, porch-like, sand-filled as my hand is, disappearing to the wrist. It isn't hard to imagine the most effective tool for sanding is a beach. Vacations abrade, renovations exfoliate. I took an inner journey and lost direction in the plush department of a billowing store. 2 couches diverged. I was skeptical. It turned out to be a sectional, which I bypassed, along with the couch whose lumps felt like money or the confidential jabs of an arthritic body. I took home the sofa filled only with itself, an infinite regression, shrinking softly from my seat. I ate plain porridge, spilled some, while my favorite cat horked fur. I do this every morning. It's boring in the sense of taking a core sample of who we are. My silverware anniversary, the year I melted it down, the rats under the house turned to ore. In love as in war, you can liquefy any number. There will be more. I'm going to pause now and read a couple of things from my book. I usually explain the book as my response to what my idea was at the time of the poetic canon. It's sort of my cheeky version of a sonnet sequence with all of the component parts replaced or updated. So instead of a kind of young idealistic speaker, I have a cynical middle-aged man, and instead of an idealized love object, I have a sex doll. And then instead of sonnets, I wrote free verse. But all the poems are in the voice kind of this character, as they would be in a sonnet sequence. But that said, I think I'm just going to read 2 poems that don't have a whole lot to do with the rest. They're both about flowers. Wallflower. Near the dissolving edge of the garden party, a tulip dives up slowly from below ground against gravity. It's like a little watched sporting event on rewind at a bar no one goes to. Those pink-tinged feet a single bullet bound for heaven, while the whole remainder of the universe swims on, undisturbed, in its habitual direction. Now someone presses pause. Stuck upside down, a foot shy of solid ground and wearing nothing but the wind's leotard, the tulip must turn her feet into a head, her mind into toes. She begins by rooting her fingers under the heavy metal cabinet of the earth. Her torso is as spare as the twine between 2 tin cans. Now the other end is talking, or trying to. Listen, and you might barely hear the arches of her feet rehearse the embouchures of speech surreptitiously to the air. You are right to be suspicious. By the time her eyesight rights itself, she'll be a periscope spying for the underground. She's building a subterranean fortress lit by multiplying bulbs and powered solely by the stationary cyclone of her mental gymnastics. The breeze is her own personal brand of highly flammable hairspray. She's shrewdly packed her appetite in one of those green tortoiseshell valises. When the party goes shits up, her getaway car will come on tiptoe. And then dandelions. They proliferated like the season, kittens on spin, pinwheels in the tantrum of morning. A Nanciness at the edge of walking, jazz hands or a buffing brush, a vitamin blush tinting everything. The lawns lay down in their tanning beds and were lit from every angle. The sun didn't orbit the earth, but each individual on it. Darkness never came. It was the bumblebees and not the weeds that went to seed eventually. Around this time, I asked my friend, "Have you ever seen a picture of a lanternfish?" And a cross breeze waltzed in, taking all our hair away. I'm going to read one more poem, I think, because it's been kind of a long night. Yeah, I think so. So this poem is based sort of on a. God, I don't know. I didn't watch very much of this show, but it was on for a while. Maybe it still is. Flight of the Conchords. Okay. And so they had a song. I think it was called like "It's Business Time" or something. And I forget the exact line, but the title of my poem is "Sorting the Recycling is not part of foreplay, but it's still very important." And that is basically the idea in the song. There's a kind of old set in their ways couple that are supposedly about to have sex but keep doing household chores instead. So and nothing occurs. So yeah, this is about recycling. Because tomorrow is when the pickup artists come. Tonight I crush all the aluminum I can. It's later than I want to be unflattened, but gamely I rub my fists in my eyes, instantly generating winter tires. Raccoons recognize me when I crescendo, paper, plastic, glass, sucking an apple juice Tetra Pak cubist, making nature envious, rule-abiding. I want to splay this crisp clamshell, erstwhile heartland of romaine, like a bedside hardback and disappear it in the yappy deep blue portal just outdoors. But is it permitted to feed the dolphins? I consult the signs. Tonight the moon is in Ven. There are 3, and they overlap, like the vicious circles of opened tins. My eyes rinse their dark insides unemotionally, like when my life mate did not believe me when I exaggerated that my new shoes busted on the first day I wore them. He was questioning my facts, painstakingly crafted from a lot of garbage shoes I have worn in the past, and these too, still hugging in their sad state my ankles like old bad deeds. I know that if it's sweet, it should be saved, if savory, savored. Mouthguards aren't part of kissing, but they are. They exist forever. Thrusting is part of vacuuming. Suction sucks, packing peanuts up like dolphins shrimping. White grains falling from where other people tossed them are serial monogamy, how the night sky and the floorboards have a mutually exclusive relationship. Spent light bulbs shake their heads until invisible on pine. How painful to step on a star is to be glad of my shoes. Cub Scouts won my empties for their Earthship enterprise. I lay them like eggs in a sack. The bottle wall they build will lend a low, glassy loveboat light. Cubs want my vice, vice wants light, light wants new blood, a triangle. The wall wants nothing but to stand, like my live pythons, when I slough the dead genes off them, buckle, be degraded, then stand. Tangerine packaging solo. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.